What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for October 4th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a feel-good Friday edition of the podcast. We have a humongous Philly show today, so stay tuned. But before we get into that, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. Follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont, Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at PhillyJimbo. On LinkedIn, on Facebook, all of that good stuff. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's the best way to get any updates on the podcast. And then spread the word. Again, I've been saying it, but if you're enjoying it, chances are somebody else will. We got people in Wisconsin listening, so we are slowly spreading this thing. So spread the word. Let your friends, neighbors, people at work, soccer parents with you, whoever, let them know about the podcast. If you need any information about the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame induction class, all of that is in the description. The inductees, ticket information, huge Phillies-centric class this year. Looking forward to that. Perfect for a red October. And then I can't mention much yet, but we are working, or I've been working with the team on a project that should be released soon. So stay tuned for that. I'll give you updates. But again, anything you need Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame related is in the description. Chase and Ryan are going in this year, so looking forward to that. Maybe that'll bring some of that red October magic to this current Phillies team. All right, we'll save the Phillies to the end. But let's go into some Eagles news. And I've been talking about new Philly. I was reminded we need to have that new attitude. So kind of looking at the first four games, I wanted to look at something positive that not really many people are talking about. And Quinyon Mitchell has been as advertised. He's been solid as a rookie, doing whatever the team needs him to do. I don't know if you saw the video clips of the game against Tampa. He actually was talking trash to Mike Evans, which I love. Anything that's going to give him confidence and help the team. And Mike Evans had a good game, but when he was lined up against Quinyon Mitchell, he only had 2 catches for 19 yards. So I love it as we're here on a bye week. Just kind of hopefully stress-free from a football perspective and let us focus on the big Phillies games this weekend. Flyers ended the preseason last night with a 5-4 win over the Devils. Next stop is Vancouver next Friday. We will be doing a little Flyers preview next week, so stay tuned for that. And there was some Sixers news yesterday. I guess Joe was interviewed, and he was talking about managing his health for the playoffs. He said it is a team effort, and I actually like the fact that he said, you know what, it's going to be tough. There might be some arguments, but I need to kind of keep focused on what's going to happen for the postseason. And I like that because say what you want about Joe and how he comes up small in the postseason. I think some of that is supporting cast related as well. But he's a trooper. He'll go out there and play injured. He'll go out there and play with Bell's palsy, torn ligaments in his knee, a fractured eye, whatever you need. So he is tough, and I think we need to kind of help, or hopefully the team can help tone him back a little bit and almost save him from himself. But, I mean, I like it. They seem very focused and a different kind of focus than I've ever seen from this team. They realize there's a job in hand. And truthfully, the way that team is going into training camp right now reminds me a lot of the Phillies coming into this season. So I like what I'm hearing from Joe and like what I'm seeing early on in training camp. Let's just hope this is not me being Charlie Brown and Lucy's going to move that football on me, but we all know how that works out. Be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences. The OG boys from the NFC East were on yesterday. Very feisty bunch yesterday, including Mike the host. I don't know if it's because he's a Mets fan or what, but feisty bunch, very entertaining, good episode. And that is available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. New baseball episode drops today. Should be fun. Phillies, Mets, Mike versus Lewis. They've been going at it all year. Let's see what they got going on. Again, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. And since it is Red October, go to Philly Goat. They are one-stop shop for anything Red October related. They got the fans back. My favorite shoes. I will be wearing them throughout the rest of Red October. I've been wearing the Schmitties, but I think it's time to officially just go all out for Red October and wear the fans. So go to their site to check that out. And then they have shirts, anything you can imagine, whether it's the election one that I have with the Democrat, the Donkey, the Fanatic, Kruk and T Mac for 2024, Believe, Holy Schmidt, you name it, they got it. So don't take my word for it. Go to Philly Goat, check out their Red October selection, and be sure to use that promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com, promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order, and get ready for Red October. All right, so Phillies Mets. And I know a lot of people, and it is kind of hard to believe if you kind of think about it, but the way that the playoffs were set up since the Mets came into existence, there really was never really a chance, really since 94 on, is the only chance the Phillies and Mets have ever had to play in the postseason. And the one thing, and I've talked about it a lot, the Mets and Phillies very, very rarely are good at the same time. We had that little blip back in 07, 08, but for the most part, when one team's good, the other is bad. So the fact that they're finally playing in the postseason is a great thing. And I'll be honest, I said yesterday, didn't necessarily want to play the Mets. And not because I'm afraid of the team, not because I'm afraid of their fans, because Citizens Bank Park is a different beast in postseason than it is regular season. It's going to be difficult for them to get tickets. And if you are going to sell tickets, I told you about John Foley. My boy John Marks is doing the same thing. PHLY Sports is being very good with this. Go to them. Not only will you save the money for a ticket broker, but they'll guarantee that it gets to Phillies fans. And truthfully, I'm thinking about looking for Sunday, trying to get some tickets. But don't be a dope and sell your tickets to Mets fans. Go through John Foley or John Marks. Let them kind of post. I've seen some posts on Twitter. People are like, hey, I'm looking for tickets for Sunday. People are saying, hey, I'm looking to get rid of it. Again, it helps ensure that Phillies fans are going to get the tickets. And probably most importantly, you're going to save a shit ton of money on the Ticketmaster fees and resales, whatever they are. It's ridiculous. So be sure if you're going to sell tickets for that. But back to the Mets. Yes, they're hot. And that is the one thing that makes me nervous, not necessarily scared, because we saw it with the Phillies. When a team gets hot in the postseason, and it happens all the time in all sports, when a team gets hot, sometimes they're hard to beat. However, for me, I kind of took a deep dive inside myself and really reflected. I don't see any team beating the Phillies. The only team that can beat the Phillies is the Phillies themselves, and that's if the bats go cold, the bullpen blows up, Wheeler, Nolan, Sanchez struggle, Ranger goes back to how he was midseason, right around the time of the injury. That's the only thing that can beat this team. So I don't care if it's the Mets, Padres, Dodgers. Is it going to be tough? Sure. But again, I looked at it more as the road to the World Series. I feel like the matchup was better against the Brewers, and that was all I'm looking for. I'm not scared at all, especially against the Mets, because we know how this ends. Eventually, they're going to Met, and it's just a matter of when they're going to do it. But it should be an electric atmosphere. I don't think, as much as the Braves, for me, have overtaken the Mets as the big rival, and that's a lot of that is the recency bias, there's nothing better than Phillies Mets. And that goes back to when I started watching the Phillies back in the mid-'80s. And, I mean, you don't really need to do much but say Phillies Mets and know that it's going to be a good series. It's going to be a battle. What a game by the Mets, though, last night. I have to say, they looked like they were dead. And then Pete Alonso just, whew, I mean, that was incredible to watch. And you got to give credit where credit is due, and that's where it ends now. Because now it's Phillies Mets, postseason. No more love for the Mets. It's about the most love you'll see me ever give the Mets. But it is going to be a fun series. And I took a deeper dive because everybody keeps talking about, the Mets and Phillies, it was a 7-6 series. The Phillies won, so the Mets are right there. It's anybody's game. But if you really take a deep dive into those numbers, 7-6, 3 of those games, though, Taijuan Walker pitched. The mole himself for the Mets, Taijuan Walker, pitched. So if you take out the Taijuan Walker starts, the Phillies kind of dominated the Mets this year. So make of that of what you will. But there, to me, is my key stat. We'll do more of a preview of this series tomorrow. But I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, that of those 6 losses, 3 of them were the mole, Taijuan Walker. So we'll see what happens. But again, we'll get more into the preview tomorrow. The big question yesterday was who's going to be the number 2 starter. Is it going to be Sanchez or Nola? And Rob Thompson, in his interview, it almost seemed as though he was leaning towards Sanchez. I don't know if you necessarily need to make that decision yet, because I think a lot's going to be dependent on what happens if Wheeler struggles and somehow the Phillies lose tomorrow. And Ruben Amaro said this. He's like, you might want to put Nola on the mound for game 2 because of his experience in the postseason and pitching in big games for the Phillies. However, if Wheeler wins and the Phillies win on Saturday, it makes sense to me to put Sanchez, who's pitched way better at home than he has on the road, where Nola, he's going to give up a home run, but he just pitched well for most of the season. So I think that makes sense. The other key factor is Christopher Sanchez and his wife just had a baby, so maybe he's going to have that dad strength. We've seen that with athletes all the time. They come back from having a baby and just pitch lights out. So that's kind of an intangible X factor that you can't necessarily account for. But either way, I am pumped. Phillies, Mets. And truthfully, I think if we all take a moment and reflect and deep down, this is the series we wanted. Truthfully, just like last year and the year before, it would have been better to play someone else, but we wanted the Braves. So for me, yes, let's play the Mets. Bring it on, and let's have some fun this weekend. I also wanted to mention the John Middleton. He was on 94 WIP, the morning show. They announced that the Phillies broadcast would continue to be on WIP. And you got to love this dude, man. He wants to win the World Series just as bad as the players, just as bad as we want it. And I feel like other owners in this city could take a page out of his book. Mainly looking at the guy that is trying to build the Sixers arena down in Chinatown. Maybe if you have a little bit of love for the Sixers like you do the Washington Commanders, just kind of throwing that out there. But John Middleton is a class act, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they have. And I have this picture in my head of them winning, him holding the trophy up and Chase Utley style on Fox, national TV, saying, we got our effing trophy back. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of a double dip for our Red October Great Games in Phillies sports history, or Phillies postseason history, I should say. And first, we're going to go back to 1977. And on this day in 1977, here's our bonus. It was Game 1 of the 1977 NLCS. None of the games from the NLCS in 77 made it, even though they were great games. It was a disappointing end for the Phillies. More on that in a minute. But in Game 1, this had the makings of a classic pitcher's duel. Steve Carlton, who won the Cy Young that year, was taking on Tommy John. And yes, kids, Tommy John, the guy that everybody says, oh, I'm having Tommy John surgery. He was a real person, real pitcher. He was the guy that was the first to do it, where they basically transplant a tendon in your elbow to make it stronger. So yes, he was a real person. He's not the underwear guy. It's not the name of the surgery. He was a real person. And he was the comeback player of the year, I believe, in 1977. So all of that to say, throw it out the window. It was the classic offensive battle. Greg Luzinski got it started for the Phils in the first with a 2-run homer, scoring Mike Schmidt. Then Davey Johnson, yes, that Davey Johnson, just because I had to look that up. So if you're wondering, Davey Johnson, who used to coach the Mets and the Nationals, yes, this is the Davey Johnson I'm talking about. I looked it up, and that's why I'm chuckling, because I'm like, wait a minute, Davey Johnson played for the Phillies? Only 1 year, only in 1977. He had a bases loaded single in the fifth that scored Larry Bowa and Mike Schmidt to make it 4-0 Phils. Dodgers got one back in the bottom of the fifth. And then Steve Carlton helped his calls out with an RBI single in the sixth. And it looked like the Phillies were going to cruise. They led 5-1 after six. Then the Dodgers came back in the bottom of the sixth, tied it up, and it was tied going into the ninth. And then in the top of the ninth, Bake McBride, Larry Bowa, Mike Schmidt all singled, coupled with a balk, and the Phillies scored 2 runs. Tug McGraw comes in and saves it, and the Phils win 7-5, breaking an 11-game, 62-year postseason losing streak. Up until that point, the last postseason game the Phillies had won was Game 1 of the 1915 World Series. Now, that 62 years is a bit misleading because it was only the 1950 World Series and the NLCS the year before. But 11 games, 62 years was broken on this day back in 1977. Phils beat the Dodgers 7-5 to take a 1-0 lead in the NLCS. Phillies did lose the next 3. That 77 NLCS was the Black Friday game, which truthfully the Phillies should have won the World Series, or at least gone to the World Series to play the Yankees that year. It would have been a great matchup, Phillies-Yankees with Reggie Jackson, Steve Carlton, Mike Schmidt, and those great Yankees teams. But Danny Ozark made a bunghead move and did not sub Greg Luzinski for defense like he has done most of that season, and that led to the Dodgers actually winning that game and clinching the series. But on this day in 1977, the Phillies take a 1-0 lead in the NLCS with a 7-5 victory over the Dodgers in what should have been a pitcher's duel but turned into an offensive explosion. All right, and now for today's actual Red October great games in Phillies postseason history. Told you, we're going all out for Red October, Phillies, Mets, all of that. We're going to go back to 2009 and Game 4 of the NLDS. Phillies had a 2-1 lead over the Rockies. We're looking to close out the series in Colorado. They had won the night before in the top of the ninth when Ryan Howard hit a sacrifice fly. Victorino got them started early in the first inning with a home run. Jason Worth added another homer in the sixth. And Rockies came back, scored 1 in the sixth, and then got 3 in the eighth and had a 4-2 lead going into the top of the ninth. So it looked bleak for the Phillies. Looked like we were going to come back to Philly tied 2-2 for the clincher game. And I remember, I believe I had tickets for Game 5. So I was like, here we go. We're going to see a clinching game. But Greg Dobbs led off the ninth with a strikeout. And then that's prompted Ryan Howard to basically add to his legend. With 1 out in the ninth, he said to the players in the dugout, just get me to the plate, boys. And depending on who you talk to, I saw an interview with Jimmy Rollins. There may have been a few expletives in there, but the story goes, he said, just get me to the plate, boys. Rollins followed that up with a single. Victorino with a fielder's choice. So there's 2 outs. Chase Utley was up. Ryan Howard was on deck. Utley did an Utley thing and battled back. I believe it was an 0-2 count. Battled back and drew the walk, bringing up Ryan Howard, who then, of course, doubled to right center, scoring 2 runs. And then when Jason Worth hit a bloop single the next at-bat, Ryan Howard scored, giving the Phillies the 5-4 lead. Brad Lidge came in and saved it, and the Phils moved on to the NLCS for the second straight year. But the legend of Ryan Howard, and I never understood this, and I'm going to go on a little rant like I tend to do all the time when it comes to certain players, but Ryan Howard was always called not clutch. He strikes out too much, blah, 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 blah. But this is the perfect example. He did stuff like this all the time. He hit the sacrifice fly the night before for the game-winning RBI. He doubled in 2 runs to tie the game, then scored the game-winning run. I never understood the Ryan Howard hate. So this is turned into a Ryan Howard appreciation post here in Red October. But our Red October, great games in Phillies postseason history. Game 4, the 2009 NLDS, when Ryan Howard said, just get me to the plate, boys, and followed through and delivered with a 2-run double. Scored the go-ahead run, and then Brad Lidge, who struggled in the 2009 season, was able to come in, save the game. Phils move on to the NLCS. All right, on this day in 1977, Phils beat the Dodgers 7-5 to win Game 1 of the NLCS, and a game in which they had a big lead, blew it, and came back to win it in the 9th. They unfortunately would go on to lose that NLCS. But that happened on this day back in 1977. It's Phillies Mets, and I'm not going to ask you if you're scared. I'm not going to ask you who's going to win yet. That'll be tomorrow's episode. But question of the day, how many games do you think this series is going to go? 3, 4, or 5? I think this has a 5-game series written all over it. We're going to be stressing, but it's going to be fun. But what do you think? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. How many games does this series go? Does it go the distance? Do the Phils win it before? Do the Mets win it before? Let me know your thoughts. 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. We will have our Phillies-Mets preview tomorrow. Be sure to go to Philly Goat, get all your Red October gear. Let me know your thoughts on how many games this is going to go. And buckle up. It's going to be a fun weekend in South Philly. I cannot wait. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for October 4th, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Friday. And until next time, go Phils.